Hello and welcome to Leaders in STEM, the podcast where we interview the very best experts from the world of STEM, shining a light on the amazing stories and innovations that led our friends and guests to where they are. My name's Paul Moss. I'm Business Development and Strategic Partnerships Director here at Intergage, and it's my absolute pleasure to introduce you to our guests for this episode of Leaders in STEM, Helena Wilde and Paul Hine from Ultra Energy. Ultra Energy delivers innovative safety solutions to help nuclear, aerospace, space and industrial companies to succeed. And alongside their other responsibilities, both Helena and Paul are STEM ambassadors within the Ultra team and work within the community to promote STEM and pass on their enthusiasm to inspire the next generation of STEM professionals. Welcome, Helena and Paul.
Hi, good to be here, Paul. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining me today. So what I'd like to do, if we can, is explore a little bit of your personal journeys in the world of STEM, how you've come to do what you're doing at Ultra Energy, but, you know, a bit of a backstory. So kind of, maybe if we could kick off with you first, Helena, you know, how did you get to be doing what you do? What's the story?
Well, I suppose I've always really been interested in engineering. You know, from a very young age, I was taking things apart, much to my mother's dismay, and then trying to put them back together again. Not always successfully, but I did have a good collection of parts to make some new things. So, and then I suppose fast forward to my teenage years, I joined the Air Cadets. During my time there, I taught propulsion and airframes to the more junior cadets. So that was where I kind of really got my passion for engineering. I then joined the Air Force as a propulsion engineer. Worked there for 10 years, which I had a great time, and you know it was a really good intro to engineering. Then I've spent many years working predominantly in the aerospace development side of things. Worked for Airbus, BAE, Fairchild Dornier, Cobham, Eaton, and now I'm here at Ultra.
Fantastic. Is there a history in your family of parents or other relatives being involved in engineering?
My uncle's a chief engineer on oil tankers in the Merchant Navy. But other than that, no, there isn't. I think I just got his gene of engineering interest.
Fantastic. And you say you spent, what, 10 years in the Royal Air Force?
I did, yes.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I come from a RAF family. So my dad was an engineer in the Royal Air Force, flight simulations and avionics.
Right.
So
okay.
Nimrod, Nat, all that sort of stuff back in the day.
Yes.
So were you working on sort of combat aircraft, multi-engine propulsion systems, or was it right across the board?
I worked on a variety of aircraft. I first started out on Buccaneers, Hunters and Jaguars many years ago. I suppose the aircraft gives away my age slightly. And and then I went on to work on VC-10s, Hercules, which was one of my favorite aircraft. And I was working on Hercules when I left. I also worked on Visit an Aircraft Servicing Squadron, which deals with any aircraft that comes to that station. So some of them were foreign air forces, some of them were UK Air Force, you know, and it was just a really good variety. So I've kind of had hands-on pretty much most aircraft that there is around.
Fantastic. And what about you, Paul? Any military connections in your timeline as well?
So no actual service. I took the more traditional route. I followed my father into engineering. My days at school were preoccupied by sport. I was a fairly decent athlete. I took an apprenticeship, which obviously we'll talk about later. But that apprenticeship led me to be trained and get practical experience in subjects. I was with British Oxygen. I became the group welding engineer. I then followed a academic course, I guess, with British Aerospace. So the aerospace side comes in on civil aircraft, ultimately leading to overall responsibility of building the flying controls, cockpit floor on the front end of the aircraft of the BAE regional jet, the 146.
Okay.
And from there, a career in aerospace does lead on to many opportunities in other companies, and I have worked on other platforms. mission equipment systems at Cobham, for instance. And ultimately, that was a good precursor to move into the nuclear sector.
Okay, so with both of you having had significant aerospace industry experience, I mean, what, you know, if you had to sort of put your finger on 2 or 3 aspects of the way that you worked within that particular sector in engineering that you've been able to carry forward into what you do at Ultra Energy, I mean, you know, in terms of working practices or the way you think about doing things, I mean, what would you say are sort of things that have been absolutely invaluable that you've taken out, you know, carried over from the aerospace experience into what you do now?
I think one of the main things is it's all safety critical systems, you know, so you have the same mindset in aerospace as it is needed in nuclear as well. And systems engineering is systems engineering wherever it's applied. And so they're sort of 2 of the main things I think that have come across. And obviously also the kind of management of teams, you know, I mean, wherever you're managing a team in engineering, it's pretty much the same. It's the same skills. So I think the years that I spent in aerospace on safety critical systems has been invaluable for I'm now doing at Ultra Energy.
Excellent. And I guess the same sort of mantra would apply for yourself as well, Paul, then, having also spent time in that sector.
Yeah, absolutely. In the aerospace world, there's a statement called FOD, foreign object disposal. If there's a bolt on a bench and you can't account for it, in other industries, you might just dispose of it or put it in your bottom drawer for a challenge. When it comes to aircraft, it becomes the Spanish Inquisition. You have to work out where it came from, why it's fitted. If it has to be replaced, traceability of product, quality, integrity, paperwork. These are all words that are second nature to anyone in the aerospace game. There's a phrase, you can't park an aircraft on the hard shoulder. So it cannot break down. And the nuclear sector, if anything, is even more demanding in that regard.
Yeah, I'm sort of grinning to myself. I remember my dad taking me into the engineering crew room at RAF St Morgan on the Nimrod squadrons when I was a kid, and seeing the FOD posters up around the place. And he's 86 now. He finished his career working for Siemens. He was in technical authorship on military comms projects, and he's got a workshop at home locally, and he still fettles things and builds things, and it's a proper old school engineer, which is brilliant. I'm rubbish on the tools, but I kind of got my passion for the sector from my dad, and he still talks about FOD at 86, nearly 87 years old. His workshop is absolutely spotless. Everything has its place. And I remember he used to help me build motorbikes in my youth, and it was like, no, that little hubcap full of bits and bolts and stuff that's left over, there's something wrong there. We need to account for everything, and it certainly stuck with me. So it's brilliant to hear your experience in that sense as well. So tell me, if you can, and I know that Ultra work in some fairly sensitive sectors in industry, but it would be good to get an overview for our listeners of what Ultra does and the types of customers it services.
Well, I mean, we have our sites here in Dorset. We also have a site in Red Rock in the USA. And really, we specialise in nuclear control and safety systems for a wide variety of applications in various sectors. And we provide the kind of innovative solutions that our customers need. No 2 projects are the same. No 2 set of requirements are the same. And that presents us with quite a lot of challenges. But we've got such a good pedigree of knowledge and experience within Ultra Energy. And it's really about meeting the needs of our customers and building safe and reliable control and safety systems.
Okay, so is it about, for example, monitoring the performance of reactors and understanding what's going on in terms of things like temperature and pressure and that sort of thing in those environments?
Yeah, that's very much one part of it. Engineering is about solving problems generically, and monitoring a process or monitoring the environment around a process would be 2 good examples. to make sure that either the individuals are safe or the process is under control. Those temperatures are monitored. If it goes out of control or above certain important parameters, then we put in systems upon systems. There's a lot of backups, fail-safes, levels of redundancy to ensure that a nuclear process or system doesn't go out of control.
Yeah, and again, please stop me if I'm kind of stepping on any areas where there's a confidentiality involved. But one would imagine that the nuclear sector is growing rather well at the moment, given given some of the concerns about petrochemicals, oil and gas, energy supply, generally speaking. And I know the UK, one could argue perhaps there's been a level of underinvestment in that space over the last 50 years. I know other countries, for example, France for many years were, big investment in the 50s and 60s to become more energy independent, shall we say. Are you seeing, what's been happening geopolitically over the last couple of years, what with Ukraine and so forth? Are you seeing bigger investments in this area from various global markets now?
Yes, I think we are seeing bigger investments now, and it's great that there is this focus on nuclear power generation now. Obviously it's great for Ultra Energy, it's great for the company, it's great for the whole world, really, that we're now sort of getting this big investment. Yeah.
So at a sort of high level, then, when you've implemented your solutions, what impacts is it having on your customers' business in terms of how they go about operating and the commercial impacts that positive commercial impacts that your solutions are providing for your customers?
The solutions we provide we provide a consultancy service for engineering solutions. We also manufacture build to print, so we will make systems for other customers that are in our sector. So there's a lot of research. Nuclear is a green energy, very sustainable. So for all the reasons you've explained, it is a growth sector. So there may be demand now for current systems, the operating of systems currently, but there's a lot of research and development in new systems. There's smaller systems that are more modular. All those good things we're involved in either in a consultancy capacity or providing build to print or actually building systems.
Okay, and like most industries, I would imagine your particular sector or subsector is a competitive environment. So do you have a lot of competition, and where does that competition tend to reside geographically? Are you competing with other UK based companies, or does it tend to be companies from other parts of the world?
We do have competitors, but what we provide is a unique. We've got such a range of knowledge and expertise at Ultra Energy, and although there is competition in every industry, isn't there?
Yeah.
But we find no two customers are the same, and they may come to us and say, we need a system that detects X, Y, Z, and then reacts accordingly. But we don't really know how to implement that, what that looks like. And because of our knowledge and experience, we can help customers from day one to work out what the capabilities are that they need. And then through that, we work out and we get the requirements together, and then we look at what the best solution is for that. And I think what we provide is quite unique because of the systems we provide.
Yeah, I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong in this presumption, that those sort of sales cycles, those project cycle times are actually quite long. Because I certainly, I would imagine in power generation, you're talking, these are big strategic projects that take a long time to get through the political and sort of gates, as it were, on their side, and then you're looking a long way into the future, I would imagine. So how does that impact your sort of daily lives when you're sort of do you feel sometimes like you're wishing your life away because you're working on something that might not happen for another, I don't know, 5, 10 years or something?
Well, since I left the Air Force, most of the things I've worked on have been long-term projects. I worked on the A400M hydraulic design, and you know, it was long after I left that first flew. So I think because everything is done in stages, so it, you know, although I get what you're saying, that kind of it's maybe a long time away before things go into service. But every step is so important, and every step has its challenges, and that's what really keeps it interesting.
Yeah.
I'm trying to solve those challenges.
Yeah, you've sort of touched on something there that Paul said a few minutes ago, which you know, ultimately engineers are all about identifying and solving problems. So it's, you know, it's hands-on, but it's also I guess it's also a very creative and sort of mental game as well that you're involved with, you know, figuring stuff out, which, you know, is really, really interesting. So let's talk about that in the context of some of the challenges that UK industry and industry generally is facing. And, you know, I spend most of my days talking to the leaders of engineering and manufacturing and associated tech companies. And there's 3 or 4 things that come up in every single conversation. Okay. You know, energy costs. Well, we kind of touched on that a little bit here. You know, you're working with companies to try and address those kind of challenges. Supply chain disruption, cost of materials, you know, that comes up pretty much every time, particularly in recent years. And then there's a real biggie here, which is the skills gap. Okay. You know, we've had, there was you know, this sort of phrase that was mooted in the press, what, 2 or 3 years ago during the first lockdown and all the furloughing that was going on, the great retirement, you know, where people of a certain vintage decided that maybe they could cash in part of their pension tax free, maybe they paid off a bit of their mortgage, and they decide to move out of industry. And also the, you know, the shortages of younger people coming into the sector. I mean, what's your, you know, part of your sort of STEM ambassadors roles within Ultra Energy is it's kind of looking at that. So what's your experience of that when you talk to people in industry, when you talk to people in education and young people themselves? What are you hearing?
Well, I think the main thing that we're hearing really is that there is, as you say, there is a skills gap. But that's one of the things that we're trying to address at Ultra Energy. You know, we have our STEM strategy. We go out, we talk to schools, we have events, you know, we talk to young people, and it's really about encouraging them to get passionate about STEM and see that, you know, STEM has in the world. You know, it solves the world's problems. You know, all the crises that we have in the world are solved by STEM. And it's really getting that message across to young people to say, you know, look, STEM is a fascinating, you know, subject. It's a fascinating industry to work in. It's got so many possibilities, and you really are making a difference in the world. And so it's encouraging those children to sort of get into the STEM subjects and also see that you can come into STEM careers at any level of ability. Yeah, it's not just for graduates, you know. I mean, we have apprenticeship programs at level 3 and level 4, you know, so any ability, any level, people can get into a STEM career. So it's really about kind of promoting that and getting people into it.
Yeah, I mean, Paul, if I can ask, when you are talking to education leaders and you're talking to the young people themselves, you know, whilst I don't want to focus too much on the negatives, I think it's often useful to explore some of the reasons why people in that world are somehow reluctant to get involved. And why do you think the skills gap has come about? You know, notwithstanding people going on furlough and retiring, why do you think we've got a shortage of you know, people coming into the sector?
It's a very good question. I believe that the perception in the past for engineering has been one around metal bashing, and, you know, noisy, smelly machine shops or whatever. And there are many other exciting careers. However, our task really is to get across that engineering isn't metal bashing. There are elements that are, but there is a wide spectrum of skills, you know, systems, programming, CAD design. These are all well away from the shop floor when you go into the assembly and the electromechanical assembly of our components, a lot of the time they're really complex systems and really interesting to make in themselves. So getting people aware that there is an option in engineering or STEM careers is the first step. We also do corporate events where we go out into the community. You know, we might be picking litter off the beach, but making people aware of Ultra, so that not only do people know that we're into engineering and engineering solutions, but also we as a company exist. We then take ideally not just the brightest minds, but people that are interested in for a career, and they come and join us. We then open up the apprenticeship program, the graduate program, that sort of thing, and from there, we want these people to grow to be the best they can be. Because if they're the best that they can be, then that's good for the company, which ultimately leads to a better world.
Yeah. So this misperception that you know, engineering is all kind of that smoky, horrible, noisy factory down the end of the street, and you know, people in flat caps and hobnail boots it's something that comes up in almost every conversation we have, and it's in a way it's sad, you know, because as you say, it's not like that in most companies anymore and in most sectors. You know, there's some really, really cool stuff going on. And also something that I often bring up, and I guess I've got a bit of an agenda on this one given my role, is that it's not just about being on the shop floor, as you say, Paul. It's not just about even being in the design office. There are sort of complementary career opportunities available in the sector, in marketing, sales, operations, supply chain, business development as well. And I think that's often forgotten about. You know, if you've got a passion and an interest in things scientific, technical, engineering, and manufacturing, okay, you might not be, you know, a bit like myself, you might not be somebody that's, you know, happy on the tools, as it were, but there are things that you can do to add value to the sector that are beyond being on the tools or beyond being, you know, an engineer as such. And I think that's often forgotten about as well.
It is, and you know, the whole structure of any company, everybody plays their part, you know, and I suppose it reminds me of the sort of famous quote from the guy that was sweeping the floor at NASA in many years ago, when JFK went and said, "So what do you do here?" And he said, "I'm putting a man on the moon." You know, it's everybody plays their part in what we do, and every role is crucial.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit more about the community engagement that you do. You kind of touched on it a bit there, Paul, but you know, I know, for example, you were part of the STEM pavilion at the air show recently. So tell us a little bit more about how that all came about and what you were doing there.
Yeah, so the Bournemouth Air Festival is an event that happens every year, and part of that is a wider community engagement, and within that there is a STEM village which Ultra sponsored this year. So it's a large tent full of like companies and also unlike companies. The RNLI were there, Rolls-Royce were there, we were there. So generally the only link is really of STEM. So people come into the village, there's usually interactive tasks going on where people can sort of relate STEM to a practical situation and then learn a bit more about the company. And then maybe go off and make the connection that actually what's flying above our heads and quite dramatic has to be made, has to be designed, has to be programmed, and even the people flying them need to be trained. And we as a company and other companies play a very important part of that.
Excellent. And beyond that, I mean, you know, have you got active programs in terms of engaging with secondary and sort of tertiary education locally as well?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we have. We've got quite a few events coming up. We've got one at QE School in Wimborne in a few weeks' time. That's a careers fair, and it's those kind of events that we go to. We talk to the young people, we talk to the parents, you know, and we talk to them about what their options could be in a STEM career. And although we're coming at it from a point of view of Ultra Energy, we're looking at it as well from, if we can increase the pool of people that there are in STEM, it can only be beneficial for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that, you know, that's the kind of thing that we do. We've got many events planned, you know, for not just for kind of children, young people that are looking to do their GCSEs next or their A levels, but younger, to try and encourage them to study the STEM subjects from sort of 11 onwards, really.
That's brilliant. And if I can ask, you've kind of, I'm presuming you've both got day jobs, okay,
Yeah.
or things that you do most of the time. But what percentage of your time, both in terms of working time and personal time, are you devoting to your ambassadorial roles?
I'm really, I would say, in work, I'm probably devoting about 15 to 20% of my time to STEM. Outside of work, probably about sort of 30% of my time, my own time to STEM. So I've recently become a STEM ambassador with STEM Learning. So as well as doing events through Ultra Energy, I also do events outside of work as well.
Fantastic. And what about yourself, Paul?
Yeah, I'm the same. So 15-20% inside work. Outside of work, I do. I'm an athletics coach, so I've often been around kids at school. We've just an example. 2 years ago, we had a school party come in and do a work tour around Ultra, and one of those lads was very interested in our company and what we did. Went away, worked on their STEM subject at school, and I'm pleased to say this week they joined us as an apprentice. I run the apprentice program. I run the apprentice program at Ultra, so I'm delighted that little site tour and showing a bit of interest in Ultra led to a career for him. And I think we mentioned earlier about the economy. Going to university and getting a graduate debt isn't for everyone these days. And a solution where you can actually learn and get experience whilst being paid and further your education is very relevant.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think what's also, missed quite often is that, average salaries and career opportunities and remuneration are actually are higher than the average given a particular age demographic within our sector, as opposed to other industries or service industries. And I think that's often missed as well.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and that's one of the things that we also try and promote. Say, not just is STEM an interesting career to get into, not does it just change the world and solve the problems, but it pays well. There's opportunities for travel, and you get to work with really, really interesting people that are like-minded too.
Excellent. So it's been really great hearing about what Ultra does. One other question actually for you, Paul. So you talked a bit there about the apprenticeship scheme. I mean, how does that work with Ultra? I mean, how many apprentices are you typically taking on in a year? And are those 2-year apprenticeships, or do they tend to be a bit like the old school ones of years ago, where they might be a lot longer, 5 or 6 years? How does that work?
So we take an example of a level 3 apprentice. They come pretty much from school. They go to college and carry out full-time education in the first year, completing engineering modules, whilst having 1 day on academic studies. The second year they would be at work at Ultra full-time, having 1 day a week again at college, and that would take them up to become a level 3 apprentice. If they want to progress that, and we feel it's the right thing for them, then another 2 years at level 4, and then they can progress on and complete a degree if they are of that caliber.
Excellent.
So it's that balance of academic with practical experience.
And in a typical year, if there is such a thing as a typical year, how many apprentices would you sort of induct into that process with Ultra Energy?
So this year we took on four apprentices. We have many examples where previous apprentices are now team leaders or supervising people, or have progressed up into the systems engineering team with people like Hannah. We have Helena. Sorry, we have. I guess about 200, just over 200 people on site. So it's a reasonable proportion each year, plus quite a number that stay with us, that we retain.
Yeah, I was
successful.
going to say, you know, if you take on 4, how many typically would you? Is there a typical year where you take them all on, or do you tend to take on sort of 3/4 of them or half of them? I mean, how does it tend to pan out?
I think it's so there's no guarantee in an apprenticeship that there's a job at the end of it.
Yeah,
But the skill of the apprenticeship is to first of all make sure that the career path is one where the individual has an interest,
yeah,
and also ultimately there is a vacancy at the end of it. Now I can't control the latter, but I can certainly control the former.
yeah,
But you want good people to be in a job that they will enjoy, because inevitably you spend probably more time in your job than you sometimes do with your partner. So
yeah,
you might as well enjoy
absolutely.
it. Is my philosophy.
Yeah.
But yeah, currently it's working well. Our apprenticeship program, I believe, is growing. Certainly, it's getting more notice and recognition inside the company, and long may that continue.
No, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So you've touched on impact on partners and all that kind of stuff. I mean, by way of a wrap up, you know, what do you guys? I mean, you mentioned athletics coaching is something that you've been involved with for a long time, Paul. Helena, what about yourself? You know, when you're not being a STEM ambassador, when you're not being a systems engineer at Ultra Energy, what do you do? You know, do you have any spare time? And if so, how do you fill it?
Yeah, I do. My spare time is predominantly filled with my partner and her 7-year-old son. It's really about him, to be honest. You know,
Yeah,
it's the majority of the time it's just the day-to-day things, and but then at weekends, you know, we like to do a lot of activities. We like to get them out. We go to like water parks and jump around on inflatables in seawater and strange things
fantastic.
like
Yeah,
that.
any STEM kind of aspirations on the part of your little
Uh,
friend?
yeah, I'm not sure yet, but getting there. He did
Okay,
used to have a future engineer T-shirt, which he grew out of, so I need to buy him another one.
fair enough, fair enough. And Paul, with the athletics coaching, what sort of angle are you a runner or are you a thrower? What is it that you're into?
So my event back in the day was 400 meters, and
Oh, the scary one.
yeah, the
It's
horrible
a
one.
hard one.
Yeah,
So when I moved to Dorset about 15 years ago, I decided that it was a good time to give something back to the sport that gave so much to me. I went a long way, travelled to lots of interesting places with the sport. So I got into coaching, and I'm now a county official. So 3 nights a week, you'll find me voluntarily coaching athletes at the track. And then when I'm not doing that, my main sport, believe it or not, is sailing. I like to think I'm still competitive. So
fantastic.
I get the drive out of trying to get a boat going as fast as it can.
Fantastic. So with the athletics, is there a particular club you coach for or an
Yep.
organisation locally? Who give them a plug? Why not?
Yeah. So I'm one of the coaches at Wimborne Athletics Club. There's a
Okay,
road running section, a cross country section. There's a track section. We definitely punch above our weight. We often win leagues each year, and we put the bigger clubs to shame, which I'm very proud of.
fantastic. And with both of you, are there things that you take from your engineering background into your outside of work passions? I would imagine in the athletics thing, probably structure, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the sessions each week have to be safe, and the nuclear is a very safe industry, of course. So we make sure that the sessions are planned well and are safe. You never quite know who's going to turn up for each session, but I don't want them injuring themselves first and foremost. But I want
Yeah,
them to aspire and be again the best that they can be. So I push them quite hard. We compete in the summer, but we train hard in the winter. So again, there's safety is a factor there. But yeah, and I'm also it's a really good opportunity to engage with young people and converse with young people, which I do at work with the apprentice program. So there
yeah,
is very close links.
that's brilliant. Thanks, Paul. Paul, Helena, tell us where our audience can find Ultra Energy and also details of the STEM outreach activities that you're undertaking.
Yeah, so you can find us at ultra.energy. There's a graduate and apprentice page on our website, and you can also find us on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Thanks, Helena. Thanks so much for your time, and look forward to catching up again very soon.
It's great. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.